Hello, everyone. This is Ryan from teia.cafe. Today, we'll be talking about the collapse of crypto, the ugly, the bad, the good. I'm not trying to scare anyone, but today's date is December 17th, 2025. And if you've been paying attention to the charts lately, it's not doing so well, right, in the crypto space. So I wanted to kind of talk about that a bit. And because I've been through several crypto winners already, might help to like get a little bit of perspective. Crypto, despite all of the poor market conditions in the last few years, is still the most popular it's ever been in history. Just because prior to a few years ago, nobody really knew about it, like at all. And but the patterns that you see, the hype cycle and sort of the market corrections, right? They remain fairly similar to each other. So I might I don't want to make predictions, but I might be able to maybe help some people understand what's going on because when I go on social media these days, especially Twitter, I see a lot of panicked posts, a lot of projects kind of talking about themselves in desperation. Some of them doesn't even make any sense. It's just like kind of grasping at straws, right? You could kind of argue that we've been in a bear market since 2022, like for real, right? If you look at the prices, like we're nowhere near we were in 2021, and that downward slope has just been continuing on. So one silver lining, I guess I'll start with one of the good points, even though it comes at the end, is that we're kind of reaching a point. It's been long enough since the last crypto peak, right? About 4 years, relatively speaking. 4 years was about the same amount of time it took from one peak to another in the last few cycles as well. So when I joined crypto, that was like 2013, 2014. I mined a little bit of Bitcoin. I was an Ethereum ICO. And then, yeah, and then I got my wallet from the ICO, and it just kind of sat there doing nothing for about 4 years. And then there was a big hype cycle that came. Well, not really big, relatively speaking. It was big for us. uh, yeah. So around 2016, 2017, the prices start going up. Ethereum was about $100, and it shot up to 1,400. And NFTs, CryptoPunks, CryptoKitties, those sorts of things, those were in the media. People were talking about it. It wasn't really like headline news like it is today, but it'd be just be kind of like it'll be in the tech portion of TV of a news show, for example. So it was just this thing, kind of interesting thing. People didn't really have strong opinions about it, other than the people inside of the community itself. But it just kind of came and went, and then dropped right back to $100. So 100 to 1,400, right back to 100. So yeah, so I saw a lot of what happened, the highs that happen when prices are going up, rapidly shooting up. I got lucky. At the time, I was like kind of in a little bit of a financial trouble, but crypto really saved me. And that made me a believer in the whole thing because, like, wow, this weird internet money thing, like, actually helped me out on a personal level. So, so yeah, so I've stuck with it since then and have been a believer ever since. But I also saw what happened when it dropped all the way down, right back to $100, and it could get very ugly. And we're kind of seeing that right now. A lot of things people posting right now kind of reminds me of that. I've seen like Solana, quote, brag about their protection against DDoS attacks, even though that's really not a crypto thing. Like, crypto doesn't have to worry about those sorts of like flood attacks because in order to use it, you have to do a transaction, right? And in order to do a transaction, you have to pay for it. DDoS only works because it's free, is using free computing power, right? Basically, from so anyway, it's just like ridiculous. And then one other thing people are talking about, Bitcoin, quantum computing. Like Bitcoin is ready for quantum computing, and it's just bizarre because that's not anything new. People have been talking about it since 2000, since I got involved almost 10 years ago. And it's one, it's not really a problem because crypto quantum computing cracking the code is still many, many years away. I have plenty of time to prepare. But at the same time, it's like, why are you like, I don't know, like the reason the reason why it all of a sudden everyone's talking about it is kind of bizarre. Like there doesn't seem to be a logical explanation why they're bringing this up. But I do think it's like kind of a distraction from the fact that the prices are sinking and they're basically already looking for excuses why they're gonna fail, to be kind of blunt about it. There's a lot of the Bitcoin itself will be fine long term because you cannot really erase a blockchain, right? That's kind of how it's designed. If one person still believes in Bitcoin, then it's by definition it's still alive. All you need is one machine, one node. It'll be nice if there was more than one, but because they need each other to keep things updated. But worst comes to worst, it never really dies. No crypto coin really dies unless you shut it off for good. But so that's not really the issue. The issue really is there's all these like hedge funds and really fiat money trying to get in on the whole crypto thing, and they're not really using the tech as it was originally intended, right? It's like kind of almost like a grift because there's a lot of projects out there that call themselves crypto but is actually not. Some of them are running on servers, Solana. Some of them are a lot of the Bitcoin funds that have been coming out of Wall Street lately has nothing to do with crypto. Some of them are just like futures markets where it's just a bet to see whether it's going to go up or down. Like they don't even touch the thing. A lot of exchanges, right? They hold your wallet on behalf of you, right? That's what you're using when you use their services. For better or worse, right? There's some advantages to that, but they're not really holding crypto in a private key wallet like it was originally intended, right? The weird thing that happened in the last few years really is that people probably either because they didn't know how or just was too lazy, but decided to quote invest in crypto by parking their money on like Coinbase or one of those exchanges rather than doing self custody, right? So what we're seeing right now is I do think a lot of the organizations are kind of seeing the writing on the wall and then they decided it's time to get out. At the same time, they're telling people now's the best time to get in, Bitcoin to $1 trillion and blah, blah, blah. But they're just really trying to suck retail investors in just to get a little bit of returns before they finally liquidate. Most of these places have lost money, and firms like MicroStrategy, who yeah, it is really bizarre. It just has this weird, convoluted system to try to get people from Wall Street or fiat money into Bitcoin rather than actually sell it in the Bitcoin itself. Like, you don't need to invest in these funds. You can just buy Bitcoin directly. If you really believe in it, that's all you have to do. And there's lots of ways of doing it, right? It's called self custody. Just buy it yourself. But yeah, that's not what got popular during these last few years. And they're the first ones to go because it's not only about holding crypto in your wallet. It's not about the HODL thing. It's like they have obligations, right? They have to go through Wall Street regulations. They have salaries to pay. They have founders to make rich, right? Like the guy. And these people, they'll tell you anything they want if you think it'll get them rich, and it's just been, yeah, I honestly have been pretty disappointed by what the industry turned into the last few years. And I'm not going to be too sorry when I see that stuff go. Even though right now it's also hurting my wallet because, right, it's just kind of like bad actors hurt everyone, bad apples. It's just, ugh. So anyway, that's basically what's going on right now. It gets more complicated, um, which I'll go into. But I just wanted to kind of give, before I go more into detail about what's happening now, just a quick, it's like sort of like mini summary of like what happened before. So when I got in, I don't have any reference to what happened in crypto prior to 2013. I wasn't in that early, but I have an idea. What really got me into crypto was Ethereum, and I was in the ICO, and I was sold on the idea of smart contracts because I thought that the transparency of having like automated payments that is both decentralized and transparent, right? That could have a lot of uses, especially in like cleaning up a lot of the. I come from a music background, so cleaning up the music industry, right? Doing deals, keeping track of copyright, royalties rate, and have all that stuff like funnel into everybody's bank accounts automatically. That seemed like a really good idea. And so I was sold and I got in. But getting in was not easy at all. And I think it's important for people to know this because if it's too easy to get in on something, that might be a sign that it's not gonna last. Every time I made money in crypto, it's paying my bills right now. I'm not super duper rich, so don't ask me for money, but I made enough on my returns to pay the bills currently. Yet to be seen if that can continue, but we'll see. uh there's the But anyway, for me to get into the Ethereum ICO, it wasn't just like going to a website, signing up, and putting in your cash. The only way to get to get Ethereum coins at the time was to directly pay them Bitcoin. And the only way you could get Bitcoin back in those days is either mine it yourself or you find some guy on the internet and then you trade it for a piece of pizza or something. And people make fun of that transaction, the Bitcoin for one pizza, one Bitcoin for one pizza, blah, blah, blah. But like, if you're looking at it objectively, it's like, well, what else were they supposed to do, right? That was the only way. And probably not even the only one, right? There's plenty of people that traded bartered for Bitcoin with something that they had. So it's a very, very different environment than it is now. Now there's exchanges, it's really, really easy to buy crypto, even with a credit card or bank account. But that wasn't really the case. So after I got into the Ethereum ICO, basically I sent them maybe $100 or $200 worth of Bitcoin that I mined, which took like several months, by the way. This is why people didn't get in early, okay? It was a lot of work for something, like you had to be kind of like obsessed about it to even think of doing it. So yeah, I think it's really important to keep that in mind because the opportunities are never obvious, and if it's very popular, it's probably you got to be a little bit wary. You can't have it both ways at the same time, right? Something popular but also special, right? You can't be special and normal at the same time, right? Like, well, anyway, that's a different topic. But so anyway, after that, nothing really happened for like a few years. I until like 2016, 17 ish, the price of Ethereum kind of wobbled around for a few years, but eventually it's kind of settled around $100 or so. But during the hype, and which was actually triggered by CryptoPunks and CryptoKitties NFTs, it went up from $100 to $1,400, and people were like, "Wow, whoa!" And some people made a lot of money, and it kind of got into the news. People were talking about NFTs for a little while, not like they do today. It was more like a niche thing. So it was on the news several times. Some places wrote articles about it, but it was more like a, hey, science and technology news. It wasn't like the huge like blow up we saw in 2021. So that came and went, and it was cool. The other thing that was going on was ICOs became a big thing. So that includes Tezos as well. Around that time, that's when Tezos launched. But the first ICO really was Ethereum in 2013, 14. In case you don't know what an ICO is, initial coin offering, just think of it as IPO, like when a company goes public. This is ICO when a coin goes public, and it includes the public to basically directly invest in the project. At the time, that was actually very novel because, like, some random person like me could like actually do it. If I was willing to do the mining thing and all go through all the hoops, um, it made people, regular people like me, feel like an investor, like a real investor, right? That didn't have to go through accreditation and all those sorts of things, and it was relatively affordable at the time. Getting into Ethereum's ICO at the time was probably just a few $100s at most, and that got you about 2,000 ETH, and we can do the calculations. Yeah, it's pretty good return, right? But yeah, so the hype during 2016 didn't really last. There was issues with NFTs that really people took a look at it. Even Bjork was like fooling around with it for a while. Her being way ahead of her time. Yeah, and people checked it out, but it didn't really solve the problems that they need, so it just kind of collapsed. So it went up from 100 to 1,400, then back to 100. And again, it stayed that way for about 4 years. And interestingly enough, they in the crypto cycle of 2021, they actually spent a lot of time, this is Ethereum folks, like kind of refining, um, basically trying to make the NFT thing that failed in the last cycle up to par. They didn't make a huge changes, but they made the process of owning one smooth enough to the point where they felt like it was time to market it again. So I have a lot of respect for the people that were doing that work during that time, because for about 3 or 4 years they were just kind of building away in the shadows and just going at it every day. And then when it was for it to take off, it happened. And the rest is history, right? Sort of. I mean, we're still living in it, but so yeah, so that's the gist of how I got there, right? Interesting thing enough, both cycles were triggered not by DeFi or any of the other things they were working. They were both NFTs. And I do believe that even in the next cycle, it's going to be NFTs, because NFTs has to do with art, right? And then it's really, how to say it, it's really the ideal market to test the functionalities of crypto projects, because crypto is a very, very new technology, relatively speaking, right? It's been around for like over 10 years, but at the same time, no one really has been able to like figure out like what to really do with it to make it useful. But it has a lot of applications in the arts, and the arts is a good place to test things out, because before you start using these things for like medical devices, or hey, your escrow on your home, those things, you can't have failures, right? Like, it's not acceptable. But with art, things break here and there is not that big a deal, right? It's a lower stake asset that is ideal for experimentation. And that's the reason why I think that even today, like, it still continues to be one of the, if not the biggest quote product in the space. This is also the reason why I doubled down on Tezos. I'm completely out of Bitcoin. I'm completely out of ETH. I sold it a long time ago, just because, for reasons I'll get into. But uh, yeah, I still think we're not out of the NFT thing yet, because in order for crypto to have utility, to be useful, it really needs to nail the model in the creative spaces first. Then after it proves itself, it can probably move on to other things that require more precision, and the failure rate has to be zero, right? For some things. So yeah, so that's what we're kind of moving towards, and I do think Tezos is really like the best candidate. They've been doing the most in that area, at least for now. So we'll see what happens after this cycle, though. It's gonna be very, very bumpy. So yeah, so the ugly, right? The ugly and the bad, they're kind of related. If you're being for real, there's a ton of scams in crypto. That's the reputation we have. There's a ton of phishing, people just trying to steal each other's money. There's the security. There's a lot of half-ass projects where the security is really not up to where it should be. And so you hear about these big places getting hacked and drained, and at a level that's probably not acceptable, right? Uh, and then there's, of course, the meme coins, which is not as ugly, but still, right? It's just basically a casino, right? And you ask them, what does a coin do? Nothing. Like, some places don't even hide it anymore. Well, so you have these coins that exist for no other reason than to be a casino where you hoping you get early enough before you get wiped, right? And so all of that stuff is it's not gonna go away, but it's gonna be less emphasized as the markets kind of correct itself. This happened before too. I remember in the ICO era, there was all these coins just popping up everywhere. Everyone on their moms wanted to create a ICO because they heard a few people got rich from it. And just like today, they're making dog coins and ape coins and whatever. It was Bitcoin Silver, Bitcoin Gold, Ethereum Classic, Ethereum this, well, yeah. So, but if we're being real, there was a market correction right after that cycle happened. And there's a lot of projects that were like big names at the time that are just disappeared. They're not completely dead. They're still around, but if you look at the charts, like it hasn't done anything in like over 5 years. So you could probably say, okay, it's probably dead, right? And I just wanted to emphasize how easy it is to be on the top 10 and never heard of ever again, right? Because the saying, the higher you are, the harder you fall, right? And a lot of the projects that kind of over marketed themselves over the last few years but didn't deliver on their promises. It would be a different story if they marketed something and they were in parallel providing actual value to the people that bought in. But people call it a bubble because that didn't happen. It was just pure marketing. So a lot of those projects are collapsing now because they're running out. Because if you don't have a real product, even if it's not intentional, your project turns into a Ponzi. It's basically same thing happens at startups where they have a ton of like where they raise a lot of money. The founders has their share. For what it's worth, they could be trying their best to make it work. But when the project starts to fail and you kind of know it, um, the thing most people do is they try to sell off their shares, in this case, the coins, before people realize and then just jump shit. And they're going to lie. They're going to tell you whatever you want to hear while they're packing their bags. But I think that's been happening. I see like all kinds of ridiculous things, people saying it has no bearing in reality, but what they're doing is they're trying to distract you while they head up the exit. And unfortunately, uh, yeah, if this is your first cycle, you probably didn't see it coming. It can be kind of difficult to see. It was the case for me too. I didn't know, right? Luckily, I stuck to projects that were actually working on real things, and that included Ethereum as well. My portfolio during like 2017 to 2019 was Ethereum, a little bit of Bitcoin, a tiny bit, and then Dogecoin. I had others, but they were just for fun. Yeah, those really are the three things, pretty much. Yeah. So at the time, they were working on things, and it made me feel okay. But in the last couple of years, I lost that feeling from those projects because the bankers came in, they kind of kicked out, or the speculators basically took over, and the builders were either subdued or they left. And there was a big shift in culture at Ethereum that I was not comfortable with. And that's why I got out. I was serious about it. I was a validator for a little while, and that wasn't cheap to do that. But the returns sucked. the customer service was horrible, and yeah, it just like didn't make any sense anymore. So, so the reason why Tezos, for me, Tezos was the place where all those things went. But again, nobody believes it because everybody used to make fun of Ethereum back in the day in the same way that people making fun of Tezos, even though objectively it's probably the highest quality project in the space right now. It's not perfect, but they're at least trying to solve problems, real problems. And there's a few others, like I like Gridcoin. Decentraland is still pretty interesting because it's decentralized. I do think like a lot of the projects that are going to survive in the future is going to be good governance because uh when people start to sell and that entity is centralized, if that one party leaves, that's it. It's just game over. And we're going to see who's been doing this decentralization thing for real or those who have been faking it. And that idea of confronting that truth is like freaking a lot of people out, I think, right now. But that just how it goes needs to happen because the way the industry was going up until this point, like crypto has a terrible reputation right now among the general public. A lot of it comes from FTX. And even though that's technically not crypto's fault, the technology did not allow that. That was really Wall Street, right? But the kind of people that end up representing the space, they're not doing the industry any favor because without people's trust, crypto is nothing. It's all about trust, and they haven't used the technology in the right way. I don't know. Most places they don't even check ledger records, even though that's the whole point, right? So all that stuff needs to go, and it's happening now, and it's going to be a little bit scary. But a lot of us have been waiting for this moment for it to finally we can move on. So you're going to see how it turns out. So here are, so I'm going to go into the good part finally, right? But before I do, as mentioned earlier, I wanted to kind of talk about maybe a few other perspectives that seldomly gets talked about. And a lot of it has to do with Japan. I'm Japanese American, by the way. It's kind of, I don't live in Japan, but I pay attention to what's going on there, here and there, just to like kind of get informed. But Japan, if you think about it, now is Satoshi Nakamoto Japanese? Nobody really knows, and I don't know if we ever will. But my hunch is that there is a good chance that he was, just because of like the things that happened around the crypto industry when it first got started. So a couple things. The Bitcoin was like invented around, ooh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Let me check. I think it's 2010, 2011, around there. Oh, 2008. Actually, I guess that's when it was first conceived. Now, you think about it, right? That happened at the exact time the financial bailouts were happening, right? And the whole like you watch The Big Short, right? The collapse in the economic market, banks going out of business, things like people couldn't have imagined could happen. And I do think that the development of Bitcoin was really a reaction to observing that. Because if you're paying attention, and obviously Nakamoto's a smart guy, right? Um, and he knew what was going on and like how that bailout was a really, really um, big problem in the economy. And honestly, we're kind of hitting that point of like inflection point. Because back in 2008, they bailed out the banks. They punished no one. They kind of got away with it. Did they fix the problems underneath? That's what they say. They say they did, but did they really? Right? And there's good reason to think that this system that Satoshi created was a result of basically him or her or whatever. Maybe it's a bot, but maybe a bot created Bitcoin. I don't know, but the idea is to create an alternative currency system that could not repeat the same mistakes of 2008. Right. The most interesting thing about crypto, and not a lot of people talk about this, is the fact that you cannot go into debt. I People talk about the difference between digital and fiat, but there's a lot of overlap between digital currencies and crypto, at least on the surface. But one of the biggest differentiators is the fact that you cannot go into debt. You can't take out loans, at least not directly, right? You have a wallet, and the wallet is always positive. You cannot go negative. So that's one big part of it. And I do think like it's pretty safe to say that Satoshi probably was not a big fan of quantitative easing and those stimulus and all those sorts of things, like shuffling money around in a circle, hoping like something good is going to happen. Right? I don't think he was really into that. He wanted to make Bitcoin a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That's in the title. So, what the so if you take it from that point of view, right? And they decided to launch this thing into the world that offered a real alternative. In the beginning, no one took it seriously. Well, they even knew about it, right? It's very abstract. Like, oh, you can own money on the computer out of nowhere, right? Like even now thinking about it, it seems kind of weird. But imagine back then trying to convince someone this money exists on your computer through these quote digital wallet, right? It's probably a very hard sell. So that's why it took a long time before anyone even considered using it. But they kept on doing it and kept working on it, and eventually became Mount Gox, right? If you don't know what that is, you should probably look it up because it was actually started in Japan. And that's really the reason why I do think Satoshi has like ties with Japan, just because of its early history, right? Mt. Gox was the first exchange in Japan, first crypto exchange in the world, at least the most major one. And if you look at the history of like even like Cardano, Ethereum, all the Bitcoin people, they talk. That was the thing they knew, and so some people, it was very very small back then, but some people made a lot of money in Bitcoin by investing early, very very early, even before I got in. Like they made a lot of money in Japan, and yeah, you can look it up. It's all there. So from that money, Charles Hutchison from Cardano got into a fight with Vitalik they had disagreements, and he was quote let go, or I don't know if he quit or he got fired. But anyway, he was mad. He was mad, and he decided to create the ETH killer Cardano coin, and it was so smart that it was. Look at his team; they're all PhDs from reputable universities. How dare you question my intelligence? No, sorry. Oh man, there's a lot of ridiculous things that happened back then. So, but uh, but anyway, that's where the money came from. But the reason why I'm talking about Japan is because they've been sort of a cycle ahead of everyone. And what I mean by that is that when I visited there in 2016, I went to a electronics store, kind of equivalent of Best Buy or one of those computing stores in the US. The equivalent of that over there already had Bitcoin integrated. You gonna go there, buy a TV with Bitcoin? Sure, go ahead. We support it. And meanwhile, in the U.S., we're struggling just to even get through the regulatory things, like, and yeah, so they were like way ahead of the curve when it came to like crypto adoption, and no one talks about it because reasons. I don't know why, but it's just, I know everyone. I do think it's like large. Yeah, ego thing. They don't want to let people know. But anyway, so that was there, and they tried it out for a couple years, and nobody used it. So they're like, okay, well, and it kind of faded away. Interesting, like a lot of the hype behind crypto kind of sustains itself based on like antagonism, right? Like, oh, the banks are holding us back, the government is holding us back. Screw Elizabeth Warren, her, right? Like, the Bitcoin people do not like her. uh, so it was kind of, but it 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 it's like, but even if you have an enemy, it's a reason to get up in the morning to fight your enemy, right? In Japan, they took it all the way, they tried it out, and it was a letdown. So they just kind of slowly faded away. It's still there, by the way. It's just like no one's talking about it. And Japan has one of the lowest crypto adoption rates in the world. It's kind of bizarre considering I just said Satoshi is probably from there. I don't know for sure, but probably. So they were the first to launch, first to adopt, and then first to get bored of it. And so yeah, I went there recently, last couple of months. There was like a crypto themed cafe, and I'm like, oh cool. I don't know, I'm in the area. This is in Tokyo. Might as well check it out, right? I went with my brother because we had nothing else better to do, but then it was gone. So sad. It's so sad. A couple years ago, I went to. They had even had a cafe called Mona Coin themed bar. They had a what Mona Coin. You look it up, but it was a crypto coin made in Japan at the time, and they had a bar, and I went in. No one was there, but hey, but cool. At least it exists, right? So okay, so anyway, that's what's going on. Now you can skip ahead to today. There is a interesting development happening. So in the last couple weeks, and part of it is just people grasping at straws, like I said, but they've been blaming the drop in Bitcoin price on Japan increasing their interest rates to borrow money. Let's see. Can't see it, but Bank of Japan to take interest rates to 30-year high. And why is this significant? Well, uh, to just say to make it clear, 30-year high means 0.5% to 0.75%. Okay. I'm not talking about like 10% or 30%. It's so small. And when people go to Japan, the interesting thing they notice is that if they've been to there multiple times, their inflation rate is really, really slow. Like, even my dad, he's been going there for decades. He said, "Oh yeah, the prices are pretty much the same from the '80s. It's kind of bizarre." So, all this time for the last couple of decades, their borrowing rate has been very, very, very low, and Americans and U.S. companies have been taking advantage of that. So when they need to borrow money, you can go to the bank. You can go ask your friends if you're rich enough. You could go right different places, but they do notice that the borrowing rate in Japan is really, really low, and some of that has been flowing into crypto, and it's not unthinkable, just because that's where it is. Like, that's where it started. That's where Gox was. And the people that did that stuff back in the day, they're still there. So, yeah, so I do think there's some truth to that claim, because if cheap loans and cheap money is harder to get, it's going to slow down the markets a bit, right? No, I think it's a bit exaggerated, because it's not Japan's not the only place you can get that. But there's a lot of people just kind of fixated on it for some reason, which I think is kind of interesting. So something to keep in mind. So, but what they're doing now, they're kind of tightening it up. And if you didn't know, Warren Buffett has been accumulating yen as well, because I think right now, if you look at the yen price to dollar, right, it's really not doing that well, right? It's it's like 150, 160. Back in its prime, the yen used to be under 100, in fact. Like, so that was a long time ago, though. But I think Warren Buffett is a smart guy. He probably sees an opportunity of the yen surging back, because he sees it as a good deal. Oh, here's this undervalued thing, and they're raising their interest rates, and so they're preparing um, for the yen to become more valuable relative to the dollar. So what the thing? Okay, so this is kind of going into opinion territory, but the thing I am speculating, knowing nothing about who Satoshi is or who they might be, but I do think like Satoshi did not like quantitative easing, especially from the US, because what America has done basically in the last decade or two, leading up to 2008, but even from before, right? It's like, how do Americans like maintain their standard of living, right? Um, what happens is when a currency is the world reserve currency, right? Everyone uses the dollar. That gives the hosting country kind of the ability to, quote, export inflation. Because if you push, basically, when you print more money, right? And then use that money to like kind of, so when you print money, technically it should be worth less, right? And because it should inflate the currency, because there's more of it, right? But what they can kind of get away with it, because if people are using the dollars, right, they can use that to kind of reprice things in their favor when it goes overseas, and then back at home nobody notices. We are kind of like pushing that burden on overseas countries, and that they would do it because they have to, but you could probably imagine they're probably not too happy with that, right? But it's like, well, but it's the dollar, right? Like, oh, what else are we gonna do? But that kind of sentiment is starting to fade away. More people are using the yuan for business, and well, I don't want to call it hyperinflation, but the increased inflation you see now as a result of that. It's very abstract, very invisible, but it is there. And it just means that all the money printing we've been doing in the last decade or so is catching up to us. And, uh, and yeah, so even with this, what the yen is doing, they're trying to get away from it because everyone's kind of looking at America and they're like, oh, it's a has been country. And then China doesn't go around starting wars like we do. We're just currently bombing Venezuela as we speak. There's a lot of people who are not happy with the way things are going with America and how they're conducting themselves, that if they can't maintain their reserve status, they're gonna leave. And then yeah, so I've been saying, okay, where's the good part, right? There's gonna be a big shift in the world currency, right? I don't see it happening in any other way. I don't even with like we switch out our president in a few years, with new administration, the problem is just like way too big, and unless we get like a FDR style, really crazy strategy, I don't know, never say never, but um it's probably gonna happen. So the silver lining of all of this, especially if you're in crypto, is that crypto will be part of the global financial system in one way or another. And you got to think about it. Even the idea of a global world is a relatively new thing. Like the UN didn't exist until fairly recently, right? We had to have like several world wars just to get to this point of like major countries not going to war with each other. But um and really the way that kind of um countries major countries interact with each other these days is through economy, right? They're preferable to like have an economic war over a real one, right? If possible. So a lot of these things are happening. The US dollar will still be around. But just like kind of like the British pound was around, right? It'll be around, but it won't be the only thing. And I do think like in the future currencies are going to be kind of split between the yuan, dollar, and the euro, right? The euro is actually another major contender. And but crypto as well. So somewhere in there it's going to be in there. But in order for it to be any use at all, it has to work, right? And at the current like standards of the industry, that is not happening. There's lots of places that have or tested out Ethereum, Bitcoin for financial systems. Bitcoin's too expensive, it's too slow. Ethereum has issues with its governance. There are also gas fees don't help, right? The L2s were supposed to fix the speed problem, but it just turned into this like chaos that no one can make sense of, and it's just not no one's using it, you know, you gotta be real. So um what's happening really is that we're still developing this stuff. The story's not over yet. And I do think the ones that are going to survive the next cycle are the ones that are serious. The meme coin stuff, all that scam, like dog poop coin, all those, they're all going to go away. And what's going to be left is really the projects that have been working on it seriously. And like I said, Ethereum, Dogecoin, even the Bitcoin people, they used to be that. It's just kind of disappointing to see what it's turned into. And unfortunately, they're going to pay the price for it. Maybe if it crashes hard enough, all the vultures will leave, and then the builders will come back again and make it into something. But if you're being real, it's like, well, I don't know, this thing is like 10 years old, it's like clunky. There are much easier ways to start a new coin. And even the value of proof of work is sort of questionable because it's like, it's expensive for no reason. So that's the sort of issues people are going to seriously start talking about once all the fluff money kind of goes out. And then maybe we might get something interesting. And I'm still fairly optimistic for the crypto space as a whole. I only say fairly, but I'm actually really optimistic about NFTs because it is still the next iteration of crypto because we haven't figured it out yet. Let's be real. We haven't figured out how to make NFTs work yet. Like it has to respect copyright. It has to respect royalties. It has to do all that stuff that are used in the industry every day, but the techies just kind of missed out on stuff for some reason, right? For some bizarre reason, they just sort of missed the whole point because there are other priorities. They weren't there to like build something. They were there to like make quick cash. So once that happens, it'll come back around. And the good thing, I'll leave it on a good note. The good thing, especially for Tezos, is that we're kind of reaching that point in the cycle. You could say that we've been in a bear market since 2021, 2022, when the prices started going down. If you look at the chart, we haven't gone back up yet. We haven't really recovered. So maybe we're approaching the bottom, the true bottom, and we're ready for the next cycle to happen, right? And so yeah, I'll just leave it at that. And yeah, hang in there, man. Oh, this is never pleasant. And my accounts are hurting as well. I won't lie. It's painful. But this is how the industry grows, and this is how you mature, No pain, no gain, as they say. So hopefully the pain will subside soon and then the gains will come. Okay, well, thanks a lot for listening and see you in the next one. Take care.